Hi Nandini, welcome to this video podcast where I'll be interviewing you, understand your outlook on the role product manager. I think there is some information asymmetry out there which maybe our discussion can help others. I would like to begin with your introduction.
Yeah. Hi, Devidata. Thanks so much for having me here. And I'm really excited to help whoever may be watching this. So, yeah, I can go ahead with my introduction. So, I worked as a software engineer. But previous to that, I completed my bachelor's in computers and communication. Worked for 1 year and then I went on to do my MBA. Post that, I did an internship in Amazon for a couple of months. Then I got a PPO and I've been here since 2022 June. And yeah, I've been like almost 2 years into the role and I've been working as a product manager with the Alexa team. So yeah, that's a quick intro about myself.
It's great to hear. So, can you define what a role a product manager is when you say it in your words? What that role is and some key matrices commonly used in your industry.
Okay, so yeah, I think, and this is a very cliche term. You'd see it all over LinkedIn also, but like a product manager is a CEO of a product, is what they say. So from conception to the end is something that you are the owner of it and you have to do it. Of course, there are so many roles out there. You'll see roles of product growth, product marketing, product manager, and product owner. So everything has different ways to look at it. But how I see it is that, of course, you have the onus on yourself to deliver the product end to end. So all the features that are being driven, and one is like to do the research of the product, deliver the product, and also the post analysis of the product, maintaining customer retention, getting adoption, improving discovery. All of those parts is something that you own while you may not directly execute it. As a product manager, that's something you need to be aware of and get either other people to execute or you're doing that on your own. So those parts are very that's how I think like a product manager's role actually works throughout. I think at different stages you're looking at different things in terms of metrics, and initially, of course, you're going to probably be looking at, and I don't work as closely with engineering, but then and what you'd probably want to look at is like, are your tasks being completed and what are your sprint backlogs like, and what is working right. And I think at the time of, and then you look at, of course, awareness. It's difficult in terms of discovery to actually measure that. At least what we've seen in terms of your channels which you have using, it's not easy to map them directly with the outcome that we have in the case in my field at least. So essentially what we look at is a number of customers who've actually used it and then or like adopted it once, and then how many, like I'm describing retention, but how many have started using it and then they continue to use it
Right.
on month basis. And then that's a very important metric because that also defines that how is your product actually solving a need for the customer. So that's real. And as you know, Amazon's very customer obsessed.
Yes.
So it's really important for us to make sure that like we're actually hitting the right nail with the customer and we're actually driving that impact. Another important thing is your stickiness. I think we don't actively, in my field, we don't actively look at it now, but we're moving. It's There's a natural progression towards that metric because you want to see the product is such that can be used daily and that should be also used daily. So we're trying to move towards that place. And then of course there's the, so then da by ma, which is the daily active accounts versus your monthly active accounts. So you want to check that and make sure that you have customers coming back in and you define that as stickiness, right? Another important metric that we look at, and I think and of course, every product has different metrics that you'll have. So I think it could be defined from, and anyone who's watching this can probably think of it from their product's point of view, which is that at least if you think of a device which you're speaking to, so in that every time, or imagine a Google search, right? Every time you're asking a command, if you're not getting the result that you need, that is we call it a frictional experience. So then you want that the command is always serviced in the right way. So that's a very important metric. So like if you say that 50% of the commands were not serviced, that's actually going to lead to lower customer retention, or there's going to be some kind of overlap in the metrics here. So then that's something that we look at, and I'm sure maybe a fintech product would have number of transactions. Yeah, and fintech is something that just comes on top of my mind. Maybe something in real estate is the number of sales you've made of the houses. So there are different metrics you look at least for this. There'll be some unique metrics, and that's something that's unique to this product. So I wanted to give that flavor so that you can think of it from that angle as well.
Right. Uh, So, Nandini, tell me something about your outlook on the future of product manager as a role, and what type of minds fit better. Is it a designing mind which fits better, or yeah,
I think it's more of an analytical mind and someone who understands. I think customer thinking and analytics is what's important, because in terms of design thinking is a crucial part. I think, but not just of for product managers. I think it's across roles where design thinking plays an important role. But I think what and you'll always have people in your team, or you'll have designers who can help you with those aspects of it, in case you have it. But just articulating the problem, I think, of the customer, and identifying and articulating the right problem of the customer or the product that you're solving is what is most important today, and it will continue to be important tomorrow. In the world of LLMs and Gen AI, you'll have a lot of things coming up, but then, for example, today, the way maybe I'll have a customer understanding of my customers, or like the problem I can predict for them. No one else, a Gen AI, like a tool, won't be able to do that now because of the insights that I have and the access
right,
that I
right,
have. So I think for now and for the near future, the most critical part and the most crucial part is always going to be customer understanding and articulating the right problem for the customer. The steps after that, which is like your feature planning, your prioritization, all of those things, is like a follow up which will come in. But if you're not getting the first part right, and of course the latter part is important, right? Like if you're articulating the wrong problem to your engineers, and they build a product that's not actually solving the need, it's not going to serve its purpose. Adoption will be low. All of those problems will come in later. So the first critical part for a product manager is always doing that. And I think, what I've noticed now, and which will also never cease to exist, will be your negotiation and alignment of stakeholders. You have so many stakeholders as a product manager. You're working with marketing, you're working with design, you're working with engineers. You have to convince leadership of your vision that you have for the product.
yeah,
So, and there again, like I think problem definition becomes so critical, and like the data you have to back that up. So, I'm just going to brief it down into two blocks. One will become like your analytical mind as to how you can present a business case for something, and then even identifying and articulating it in the right way so people understand. Today and in the future, these are going to always be the critical things. I don't think design thinking will come in. Of course, to apply those principles is important. But you'll have teams to work with on that. And in terms, these are the things we should, as product managers, we should always keep in mind. It can't be replaced or changed in the future.
yeah. Can you tell us something about your PM journey? Like, did you always wanted to become a product manager? Your interview experience, and something about how your degree, let's say MBA, helps in this role. Can you touch upon that?
Okay. Yeah, so I think actually, because I was an engineer, I just during my placement process, and I'm sure a lot of people know B schools have like a very the first year you join,
Yeah.
first semester you get like a lot of you have your placement journey going on, and it's back to back and it's super rigorous. Actually, at that point of time, I think I wanted to move away from at some point in my life. I thought I'll move away from tech and I'll do marketing, and so I really wanted marketing shortlists and something, but I didn't get those. And I was getting all, because I was software engineer, I was getting all product shortlists. But when I read, and I wasn't exposed to that world of
Right.
product management at that point in time. I think it was just like your classic sales, marketing, consulting is what I knew of. I wasn't very aware of the product management world, and so started reading about it once I got my shortlists. But once I did read about it, I realized that that's something that fits well for me, because I understand technology, and I don't think it's really required to also understand. If you just understand the general scenario, you strategically can understand products, that's enough. Obviously good to like you should be using apps, you should be more tech savvy than not. You should be on that spectrum, you should be more towards tech savvy. Interview experience, I don't know if it'll be as useful, because it was mostly my internship interview experience, which I had, which was just, so it was a one interview which was 20 minutes long. But otherwise I can also discuss what it is like to interview, what I've heard of people, what it's
Yes,
like to
yes,
interview
absolutely,
hands
absolutely.
on otherwise. So mine was, because it was just like my first year interview as for an internship, it was essentially just about my understanding of product in my interview, and then they ask questions on. So for a friend, and I was kind of a fresher, right, no experience in product. So if someone's moving in that direction, try to have something exclusive on your CV, that's something that's different to talk about, which actually intrigues the interview also to speak about something further. So that was one thing that I used. And then I was asked to debug the one Amazon page because I was working with the devices team. I was taken to a one Amazon page where they were selling a product, and then I was asked to how I would make more sales on this, or what would I change to make this more attractive for the customers. So I gave a few reasons on that, and then of course. I guess because it was just an internship interview, then they were just like the basic questions on why do you want to be here, and anyone for if they're interviewing for Amazon, especially, they need to understand that Amazon has leadership principles, and it's very important. And most of the interviews, and I've also taken a few now, it's always backwards. The questions that will be asked is always targeting one leadership principle that you have. So it's good to read up about those and probably have an anecdote across each of them, which is more relevant, more recent. You don't want something that you've done many years ago. So that would be really helpful for anyone who's applying. And I think otherwise, if we were to see, Amazon has around 4 rounds of interviews. They'll usually have, this is like mine was obviously just two people panel, 20-minute interview. Then I got a PPO when I had a presentation internally. But when you're laterally come in, I think there are around 4 rounds, and you'll also have a panel discussion almost each time. So then there'll be there, and like eventually, I think the fourth round may be the HR round, and it's very behavioral, so that's good. You obviously need to have a good product understanding. You should have made impact, and and then like the panel will actually just interview you based on the challenges. How have you and maybe the top three things that they find important for that role, depends on the team, depends on what you're trying to drive, and then they will your answers need to be aligned with what they're looking for. You need to be a cultural fit. I think you need to be a hustler to come in. So then, yeah, I think those were. Did I miss some part of what you asked me?
No, I was asking how did your degree help in your role? I've seen some people who have a very technical background getting into this space as well. So how does that play in when you think or when you work in day-to-day environment?
So actually, Amazon has two product roles. One is a product business role, and one is a product technical role. So I'm right now in the product business role, and I think my MBA degree just helps me being more there was no subject that I had done in my MBA degree that I'm directly applying here. But there are a lot of like strategic frameworks that we used in your, like you'll have your 4 Ps in marketing maybe. So just having that at the back of your head, knowing your customer funnel, just helps you be more strategic in taking some of these steps and understanding at least because I was in engineering, even concept of economies of scale was something I hadn't known before I did
Yeah.
my MBA. So having a business mindset when you solve case studies and you're doing all of those things, that helps. I feel like that helped build my acumen in a way to be more sufficient here. But I've also, on the contrary, I don't think it's super important for someone to have an MBA to become product managers. Even in Amazon, there are people without. If you just grow within the organization, you can become, if you're exhibiting those skills and if you learn on the way. And I think like, and I know there are other startups where people don't have a product degree, but they're from tech, but and they've been so close to tech for so long that they've understood the business side of things as well, and they've naturally progressed. But I think it's important to know business to be a product manager, whether you want to get that business knowledge from an MBA or you just generally have it as a business acumen and you're able to convince recruiters that that's something you can do, that's also fine. I think like it's not. But in Amazon, I know for a fact that they do look for an MBA in some of these roles. But I know that there are other places where it's also okay. And if you can get that experience and make switches, that's also, I think, fine.
And one thing which comes into my mind is that when you are a product manager, you do a lot of research. Let's say you are doing research on customers, okay, whatever. So we have had a course, marketing research. I think you also must have had. So
Yeah.
beyond that, what can you throw some light on qualitative research? How does the nature and how do you look at data? Anything, any light on qualitative research?
Okay, so sticking to qualitative, I think one good thing about at least Amazon is that we have so many reviews from customers just on our website. So then like
Yeah,
we get a lot of feedback, and especially like I think we should never ignore the the open information that we get from customers and open feedback that we're getting. So at least from this perspective, like so many apps these days, right? Look at the reviews that you have. Of course,
absolutely.
market research, you have to go and like recruit customers. So that's one way of doing a qualitative. But one way is to get primary feedback from customers is to look at the reviews on App Store. At least we get reviews on Amazon itself. We get people calling customer care, so we know customer care flags it to the right team if there's any like customer obsession comes from here, that if any customer has a problem, it's flagged to the right team, so you know all of those issues that are going on. So that becomes an important part of it, and that is an active research that everyone is expected to do in Amazon. But let's say we're looking from a new product perspective. One new product feature could come because you've read some reviews. So that's one way. The second thing is, I think, like, you can recruit an external agency and really understand what is your product perception in the market, and you make, so essentially what we do is we make a question, and I think a lot of places do it. I've also checked with a lot of folks in other companies where you make like a discussion guide. You have a bunch of questions you need to check. We always had someone with research here who had, like, we had a seasoned researcher in our team who had a lot of experience and a lot to learn from them, because you need to make sure that when you're talking to customers, you don't have leading biases, because you know so much about the product, you're going to end up giving some leading biases to them. So it's very, so in a qualitative research, navigating it and asking it in a very diplomatic manner is really important. And then subjectively understand. So yeah, I think like the whole data analysis part actually goes out the window, because you don't have those data, you don't have numbers and things to qualitatively analyze. Maybe you're doing an SPSS analysis, those parts don't come in qual. But in qual, you just have so much information from the customer, asking the right things. And what's also important, which every product manager should keep in mind, is that some customers don't always know what they need, but
Yeah.
understanding their pain points and like reading between the lines before solutions you can give to them. And just like, for example, if you're just checking, if you have a fintech product and you're seeing what is the financial life cycle of the product, and then or like of money throughout someone's life, and you know that okay, there's this one gap in the middle which we haven't solved for, which is like, which we can build now, and you only get that when you talk to a customer on how they're actually using it. And then that's, those are parts of like where you should really use qual. You can never underestimate quant, because quant is one, at least what I realize, is what convinces people. Qual, you'll do like 10 customers, right? You can't invest so much time in like talking to so many people, and you can't also extrapolate 10 people's information and say this sample size represents say 1 million customers. So then at least in a B2C product, and then you have to like do a quant research, try to recruit enough people to, whatever findings you've had in your quant, you're basically validating that in qual, you're validating that in quant, and then you have numbers to also back what your suggestions will be. So that's a good, a qual plus quant is the best exercise to follow in terms of research for any product.
So, when you were doing your internship versus you have been working here,
Yeah.
what are some of the areas which you were completely unaware of, like in terms of novelty of this role or something which you didn't know, anything new, or your learning curve, anything which you weren't expecting as an intern?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely very different, I'm
Yes,
sure.
yes, yes.
Nothing bad different. I think all good stuff. But as an intern, it's more of that one project that you do and just delivering that end to end. And you don't even have to worry about execution, right? I'm
Yeah.
just writing, just doing all the research, writing one document and presenting my findings, and presenting the strategy forward, something like that. But here, if you're, when you're a product manager, and of course I knew it, but I didn't experience it at that point, which was that you have to execute, and whatever strategy you're building, you, one part is convincing leaders, the second part is like you're actually able to execute it or not. So that becomes really important. And that's not always easy, because the way, I think what I realized was that some things you find and you believe, you have so much conviction for it, and you're just like, this is definitely going to work, it's going to be a needle driver, but it doesn't work. And those are parts of it that you need to take back and just evaluate. Then you do like an analysis of what didn't work and all that. But I think what's majorly different, which I didn't realize then, is like there's so many there's so many things you're doing at the same time, because you're right, you're balancing multiple charters as a full-time employee, you're doing so many meetings consecutively, you're writing documents all the time, you're doing day-to-day maintenance of so many activities, which I just had no idea that that's how intense it's going to be. And of course you're like much closer to the product and doing all of those, you're more of an integral part of it. But yeah, it's more intense for sure as a in a day-to-day life. Then it's important to do those quick check-ins on your metrics, they do your business reviews, um, and your general like, oh, what's the latency like on my product, just doing those checks. It's not going to have high impact, but just maintenance work, which I didn't account for. I was just like, oh,
Hygiene.
I have one problem statement, I'll work on it and I'm done. But it's not just that, you have so much more to do as a product manager on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
Yeah, that gives a lot of idea. I want to understand a day in your role, how it starts, and who are the key stakeholders with whom you communicate, and anything key responsibilities if you can touch upon that.
Okay, so every day is different because we have a lot of. I work on different products, but I think essentially it's important to one just look every day. Just I don't know how to actually answer this, but like maybe looking at obviously the whichever product I'm owning to look at the metrics. It's important to look at that maybe not on a daily basis, but that's a weekly thing that I'll do. And so maybe I'll maybe switch my answer between daily and weekly. So just looking at the what are my adoption numbers, what are the number of, it's not just so the top three metrics which I mentioned earlier, which was your stickiness and your adoption or your retention. Those are obviously like key goals that we'll take, but there are a lot of inputs which drive these outputs, right? So you need to keep checking those parts also, like how many customers have actually, how many like an aggregated number of how many times have they interacted with the product and those parts of it. And if there's a dip in the trend, if anything of such is happening, you know that there's a problem. So like checking those parts, that's a hygiene check which you need to do. Another thing is like I think a lot of at least in Amazon, a lot of doc writing and strategizing, especially being in a product business side. And I would also say in a product tech side because you're writing a lot of it's product requirement documents, right? PRDs. So you need to just be on top of that part of it. And and to write a PRD or to write any business document, you need to have that previous analysis. So I have so that's like a large part of what I'm doing day to day, which is analyzing a lot of the data that we have and then presenting it in the right way, either for leadership or for the engineering team, where you're actually going to be moving forward on those suggestions. And then building the CX becomes really important. So either you're working on your own and building the CX and your wireframing, or you're talking to the designers in the team who's wireframing for you. That becomes an important part of the day or the week/week. Talking with marketing is really important because they're the ones who are going to execute your GTM strategy. You can identify the assets that you have, but what is the right way to target the customer? What is the right communication we need to give to them? That is something that you need to understand. I think as a PMO, you need to understand that's their expertise. So trusting everyone around you is important, but like working with them to get that done. We have business analysts in Amazon. So while you do basic SQL, so you have someone else to do the data analysis and share those Excels with you, which have like a dump of the larger data. And then you can do the analysis further. So a lot of times you're analyzing Excels of the actual data that you to make more informed decisions. I don't work directly with engineering, but then that's also a part of a lot of roles where you have to work with them, attend, maybe do like weekly or bi-weekly connects explaining to them. So the and then the second thing that is also really another team that I work closely with is a legal team, because you need to understand if you're working in a B2C product. Actually, it would apply across, I would assume, where it's really important that whatever practices you're doing is in the right sense, because sometimes we're it and there's always a thing, right? Like implement fast and build fast, fail fast. That's like a big mantra in the startup world, in the PM world. But it's so important to check in with the legal team and make sure you're not doing anything that can have adverse consequences to your team. And you being a product manager, it's important that you are getting all of those sign offs and checking all of these parts in your team accordingly, right? Like the onus is on you, not someone else, to do those checks for whichever feature you're building or whichever part you're working. Then another stakeholder which is important is business team, or we have solution architects in the team, which can also, you can put that in the engineering side. If you have, let's say, some product which requires, maybe you're working in some monetization vertical, so you need brand sponsorship, so you need BD to go and talk to someone. So you know the features that you have, the features you want to promote, you need to talk to the business team, you need to present your case to them and discuss that further. So I think like there can be different, depends on what you're building, depends on different angles, but and what you do day to day again depends. The only thing that's constant is the maintenance work that you're doing for the product, but every day is different and you depends on the product you're working on.
So Nandini, just a top of the mind question: if someone wants to join this PM space in whatever way, so is it advisable for them to join a nascent startup which is just starting out? And what's your outlook?
I think it depends on what you want from life. If you're joining a nascent startup, you'll definitely be much closer to the groundwork, right? Like, of course, what we'll work on in bigger companies, you're going to be a little far away from top leadership actual decision making, you'll be very close to the decision making of the small field, that the product that you own, but not the larger vision. But if
True.
you're in a nascent startup, you're working like closer to the larger vision, which, and everyone's drive is different. So it depends on what you want. Sometimes you want to grow in a large organization. Sometimes larger organizations do have some sort of expectations in terms of having prerequisite of an MBA or something like that, maybe. Uh, and I know that some cases in terms of lateral hiring, unless you have previous product experience and you don't have previous product experience, don't have an MBA, I would say better to get some experience from nascent startups, then move to a bigger company after that. It's something that you want to do. And if it's just like job satisfaction driven and you feel like I just want to be like closer to the bigger vision, then start with like startups. It's a good place to be in for sure.
Interesting. So, Nandini, let's say there's this marketing mind and technical mind. Who wins? Like you must have seen a lot of product managers, their journeys and all that. Who
Yeah.
really goes forward faster, or let's say what type of mindset this role requires? A marketing versus a technical, let's say.
No, marketing mindset someone else has. I mean, it's not necessarily technical. For example, I'm in the product business role. I think it's just the business mindset or like customer backward mindset
Okay.
and like of course, I think more technical than the marketing. You'll have someone for marketing. You can't not like, for example, you can't not think of adoption of your feature, but that's not your main problem. Your main problem as a product manager is actually, are you building the right feature? And then the adoption part, you have someone to help you with the marketing side of it. But the main thing is always, are you building the right thing? Technically, is it scalable? You have to always think about those solutions, and are people going to adopt? Are you solving the right problem? So that is where, that's the thinking you need. The marketing thinking will come in. It's that very important, but you have someone to do that for you usually. Unless you're in the GTM and product marketing side, then of course that becomes your core responsibility. But I'm talking from like the PMT, PMB perspective. PMB, I mean product manager business. Yeah.
Uh, One thing, Nandini, which I did not have it here, but comes
Yeah.
to my mind. Let's say there is this feature which you think will really help the product, and
Yeah.
you are pretty convinced. But the business side or the leadership thinks that the profitability roadmap for this is like 50-50 and they are not convinced. So, in this case of let's say conflict, how does one go about it? Because you are pretty convinced that because you understand the product so much better. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think always data is the biggest thing. So if you have any form of data which can prove your point, which says that customers are looking for it, if you just have a hunch,
yeah.
then which I've done in the past, right? I've just said, "Oh, I have a hunch this will work," and then my manager's like, "What?" So you can't just say that it's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
hunch. But you need to, and I also agree, you need to have data to prove why something is important and working.
yeah.
So one is the data backing, and next is of course, even if you have all of it, sometimes you don't know how customers will perceive it. So you have to do like some form of POC launch. So that's why like A/B testing is really important in the product manager's field. Your initial hypothesis that hey, this is something that I think is going to work is proved. So you have more weight with the leaders to like actually go. So it's really important to have, and this is also a form of data only, but you've just actually done the experiment, and it's always good to have to go with that direction rather than blast it to all your customers, because the flip side of it can be really bad. So
Okay, okay.
yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah, it's very interesting how we can collect data from pilot projects and yeah,
Yeah,
and
so that becomes very important as a verb. Yeah.
yeah. So I think I got a very good idea of this space, and one more thing. What will be your advice for any future PMs or people wanting to aspiring for this role, watching this video? What will be your 2 cents?
Yeah, I think it's always maybe because Amazon has polished me as such, but always be customer obsessed, because it's easy to go and get into the technical side and like just be taken away by the technical things, right? You'll be thinking about, and I've read some books as well which talk so much about writing pseudo codes, understanding system architectures. It is important in some roles. It can be very important, but if you don't have your customer angle and you're not even thinking about, you're just thinking about business, you're not thinking what does it actually solve for the customer, it's not you're not going to be a great product manager. So always remember that in any interview that you give in the future, also stick to your customer, keep your customer lens on forever. Amazon has this thing, and you probably read it also, which is called an empty chair, which is basically that you and Amazon follows it for every role. It's not just a product role, but it's so critical in product that you always assume that the customers and an empty chair. That means that a customer's always that empty chair is for your customer. So your customer's always in the meeting room with you, and how would you solve for them? So that's how you need to like, but just always be customer obsessed. Obviously, no other things. Be honest, I think, in your interviews. Don't be very mechanical. And whenever you're interviewing somewhere, I think people will realize if you're being honest and if you're hardworking, and that will always work in your favor. But be customer driven for sure. That's going to be my key advice. I'm sure everything else people will be able to figure out from the rest of the series you're doing and the other part of the interview. But yeah, focus on customer for sure.
I think that's a great advice. Nothing very it's intangible yet very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think broadly we covered whatever I had in my mind, and that was pretty qualitative interview from my angle. And thanks a lot, Nandini, for taking out your time on a busy work day. And
Yeah.
yeah,
No
thanks for
worries. Yeah. Thank you and all the best for this.